Hello everyone, welcome to this video, and in this video we're going to do an overview about the digital certificate. What is the digital certificate, what is it used for and its purpose, and a most common use case for digital certificate, some of the information digital certificate has, and why do we generate and sign a digital certificate, and some types of digital certificates. This is not going to be very detailed, but we'll go and do more details in the next videos. This is going to be just an overview about the digital certificate. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe, and let's get started. So what is digital certificate? Digital certificate is an electronic document that is used to prove the identity of ownership. So what does that mean? So first of all, let's see who obtained digital certificate, and then we'll get into what does that mean. Digital certificate obtained by a web server. So for example, if I'm a web server and I want the user, when the user is browsing to me, I want the user to trust me. And one of the user's concern would be, how do I trust that you are actually the server? And also the other thing is the user would want the communication to be encrypted between me and the web server, right? And would want to make sure that this information is actually not tampered. So the web server would use digital certificate to achieve that. So digital certificate would, prove that this, for example, if I'm a bank, it would prove that the bank is legit and the bank actually owned this domain, and provide information about the bank, and also make sure that using the digital certificate, which have the public key, this communication between me, the user, and me, the bank website, would be encrypted. So it can be also obtained by a user or a client. If I'm a client and let's say I want to authenticate, it can be used in authentication. I'm a client, I want to authenticate myself to a server. I could use a digital certificate to use that, so I can access some information on the server. For example, it can be used by a software. So if I generated a software, I would use digital certificate to tell the user, verify to the user who's downloading my software that I'm a legit server, a legit software, sorry. If a third party like websites are hosting my software and the user is downloading it, I would use digital certificate to verify that the software is actually legit and it's created by whoever is the author of that software. Okay. So digital certificate can be called public key certificate or RSA certificate. It contains the public key of the entity that is obtaining it. Right? And the public key is going to be used for asymmetric encryption. So if you'd like to know what is asymmetric encryption and how is that public key, going to be helping to encrypt the communication between user and the server, and why the server is providing the public key, you can refer to the asymmetric encryption video on my channel. PKI, in particular, digital certificates, it can achieve the following. It can achieve the identification. So again, to make sure that this website, for example, is legit. It identify if I'm a user and I get this website certificate, I would know it's legit. I would know information about the website. And also it can be used in confidentiality, digital certificate. So again, it provides, the website would provide the public key to the user, which should help in an encryption, using asymmetric encryption. It will provide integrity, using a digital signature that is in the certificate itself. I would make sure, that digital signature would verify the integrity of the website, make sure that this information sent from the website is not tampered with. And also non-repudiation. Non-repudiation means that the sender cannot deny sending the message or transaction, because he's in the certificate. Okay. And again, it can be also used in the authentication. So if I'm a client, I want to authenticate myself to server, I could use digital certificate. So on the right, you can see a digital certificate with a public key included with it. So what is the purpose of digital certificate? Now, digital certificate serves two purposes. The first purpose is to verify the entity, make sure that you are who you say you are. And also provide the public key for use with a symmetric encryption. So like we mentioned earlier, if I'm a client and browsing to web server, that web server is going to provide me a digital certificate with a public key. And this would help us in encrypting the communication using asymmetric encryption. Okay. And also the first point is I want the user to trust me and verify that I am the owner of the website and I am who I say I am, Now, digital certificate common use case. We're gonna go through that. So if I'm a client and I want to browse to a web server, I would start my communication with the web server and be like, hey, I want to establish a communication with you. Can I trust you? Excuse me. Now, the web server, if it's trusted and verified, it will provide a digital certificate or a public certificate. And the client, this public certificate is going to help prove the identity of this web server. And this public certificate is going to contain a public key that would help in encrypting the communication between the client and the web server. And also contain, like other information about the web server and a digital signature, and that digital signature will help in verifying the integrity of the web server. We'll go in details, technical details, in another video. This is just an overview. So the client would get this certificate and would want to verify this certificate is trusted and signed by a certificate authority. Excuse me. So the client would have a certificate stored in his machine. If it's a Windows, if it's Mac, other operating system, and this store would contain a list of public CAs, trusted public CA. So the client would check in its certificate store and would verify if this certificate has been signed by a verified CA. Now, there are other checks also that the client would go through. We're not going to mention that in this video, but there are other checks that the client go through to verify that this certificate is valid. There is also validity date, for example, that the client would verify. But we'll go through details of that in another video. Now, certificate generation and signing. So let's say the client is communicating to a web server and that web server does not have a signed certificate. When I would do that, the browser is going to show a warning message because the browser does not trust this certificate. So the client got this web server certificate, but it was not signed by a public CA, authorized CA. And how did the client know that? Is by checking its certificate, local certificate store that it has on stored in with the software that comes with the machine. So there could be another reason. For example, this message warning would be shown. Another example is for like, let's say, validity, if the certificate has expired. So Just wanted to give you an overview of how would it look, when you browse to a web server that's not trusted. Now, if I'm a web server and I want to generate a certificate, so a user can trust me, when they browse to me. I'm a new web server, I'm releasing a new website, whatever it is, and I want to create a certificate and have it trusted by users. So I would use a software, for example, OpenSSL, or I would use appliance, for example, FortiAuthenticator, and I would generate a public and private key. So I wanted to generate a public and private key. So the private key is going to be kept secure. I won't be exchanging it, because if the private key got compromised, it's an issue. It's a problem. It's a security breach. And if my private key got compromised, I would need to revoke the certificate. But we'll come into certificate revocation in another video. But I'll generate private key, and I'll generate also CSR, certificate signing request, which would be the public key. So this CSR would contain information about the web server, whatever information you've entered when creating the certificate, and we'll go through CSR in another video. We'll go through technically how to generate CSR, but I generate CSR. Now this CSR has to be signed by a public CA, if in case I'm publicly hosting my website and I want it to be trusted to the users. So I would pay a public CA some money to sign this certificate, right? And there would be a different type that we're going to come into in the next slide, different type of, a signing request, or different type of certificate that you can get. Each would cost, a certain amount of money. So I will get this certificate signed by a public CA. There would be approval process. Let's say that this signing request has been approved. I'll get a public key. Now, for the case of if you want to use it internally and you're not publicly hosting it, you can use, for example, Microsoft CA. So I got the user certificate public key. Now the web server is going to be using that public key, and is going to keep the private key secure and not exchanged. So if I come to browse this website again, I would see, using HTTPS, of course, I should be, if it's secured, I should be able to see the log sign that you can see in here, and I should be able to see that the connection is secure. And we'll go through it in a bit. If you click connection is secure, you should be able to find more information about the web server. Okay. Now, we'll come into the type of certificates. So certificate type could be SSL TLS certificate, which is used by a web application, a mail server, like web server, like we mentioned earlier. It ensures that the communication is private and is going to be secured, and ensure that this website or web server or whatever, like the mail server, is authentic. It's verified, and you provide integrity also. This is the TLS SSL certificate is used by all these websites that you browse to publicly. Now, when it comes to the TLS SSL certificate, it comes in 3 flavors, like we mentioned earlier. So there could be domain. So when you generate CSR and you ask to be signed by a public CA, you could either have domain validated. So the domain validated certificate is a quick validation method, and it's acceptable for any website. So it is cheap and is just to verify that this domain on this web server is actually obtained by you. So the CA maybe was going to send you an email or ask you to post something on your website to verify this is your website. So this is used by websites that does not involve any sensitive information or credit card transactions. It's not for e-commerce business. It's for personal websites, blogs, and like I said, any website that does not include any transaction. Now the second type is organization validated. Now organization validated, it provides light business authentication. It's more expensive than domain validated, and it's not just the domain that is getting validated. There is also I think it would be 9 steps that the CA would try to, or 9 validation that the CA would go through and process in order to approve this digital certificate. This is more used by organizations that include, credit card transaction, e-commerce, and there is another type is the extended validation. Now this is the more intense one. It's authenticate or offer a full business authentication. So it's required more by larger organizations like banks, for example, and it will include 18 validation steps that the CA would go through in order to verify or sign your certificate. And another type of certificate is client user certificate. We kind of mentioned an example of it earlier. If I'm a client, it's used to identify, individual user to user or individual machine to machine or user to machine. So also it could be used for authentication. If I'm a client and I want to authenticate myself to a server. And also another type of certificate is a code signing certificate. So if I have a code or a software and I will sign it to prove the authenticity of that software, and if that software is being or it's available or hosted by third parties, I would use the certificate to make sure that it actually came from the author, of the whoever created that software, and it's not has been tempered, So another kind of certificate or type of certificate that could be mentioned is a CA certificate. CA certificate is the party or the organization that is used to, sign certificates. So we'll go in the next video quickly through a certificate that's on the available on any website or web server, and we'll wrap up this video. So this is a website, google.com. I see this icon here. I click on it. Connection is secure. So that means connection is secure. If I click on it and click certificate is valid, I would see information about the certificate. So different website web browser, show different or interpret this information and show it differently. So I click on details, do export, and I've already exported this certificate. But if you just click export, you can export this certificate into your machine. So I'll open that certificate in here. So we can see certificate information here. Now this information, I'll go through it in another video, but this is what I mentioned earlier about the certificate being organizational certificate or domain certificate. But we can see here also issued by, which is the CA that issues certificate, who is using this certificate, issued to, which is Google, validity also information, more details about certificate, which will go through every single one in a different video. And we could see here public key information and thumbprints, which is hashing used, or the digital signature, that the user check. And we can see here certificate path as well. So we'll end this video here. I hope you guys liked this video and found it informative. Stay tuned for the next videos. See you guys later.